A night of forbidden love with her boss changed her life forever. Pregnant and threatened, she fled without saying goodbye, leaving behind the man she loved. Now, amidst resentment, choices, and secrets, both will need to decide if love still has a place in their lives. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll hear in your life. The Anderson Mansion commanded respect in New York City. With its impeccable gardens and classic architecture, it represented the power of one of the most traditional families in the American textile industry. Between those walls of marble and fine wood, Robert Anderson, 35, heir to the empire, moved with the confidence of someone who always had everything. On that autumn morning, Robert was reviewing documents in his office when he heard soft knocks on the door. "Come in," he ordered without looking up. Helen, the housekeeper who had served the family for decades, announced, "Mr. Robert, the seamstress has arrived for alterations to your mother's wardrobe." Robert merely nodded, showing no interest. Seamstresses came and went from that house frequently. She was just another invisible employee in the Andersons' universe. Upstairs, Catherine, the matriarch, was examining fabrics while a 27-year-old woman patiently awaited her instructions. Melissa Scott came from a simple neighborhood in the outskirts. A graduate in fashion design from a state college, she had gotten this job through a recommendation from a client at the small atelier where she worked. "I want all the gala dresses remade," Catherine said imperatively. "Some are out of fashion. Others need adjustments. The company's charity event is in 3 weeks and I need to look impeccable." Melissa just agreed with a slight nod. Her brown eyes carefully observed every detail of the room: the silk curtains, the signed paintings, the ceiling with plaster details. It was like entering a museum where you couldn't touch anything. "You can use that room next door as a temporary atelier," Catherine continued. "I want you to come every day until the work is finished. Helen will show you the place." In the following days, Melissa became part of the mansion's routine. Silent and efficient, she worked long hours in the small improvised atelier. Occasionally, she overheard the employees' conversations about their employers, about how Catherine controlled every aspect of her son's life, about the marriage she planned between Robert and Caroline Vanderbilt, daughter of an important investor. The first meeting between Robert and Melissa happened accidentally in the library. She was looking for inspiration for a special embroidery when she saw him. Tall, imposing, focused on an old book with a dark cover. "I'm sorry, I didn't know anyone was here," said Melissa, discreetly backing away. Robert looked up. It was the first time he really saw Melissa. Not as an employee, but as a woman. There was something different about her. A silent dignity, a beauty without artifice. "Feel free to stay," he replied, surprising himself with the gentleness in his tone. "The library is big enough for both of us." Melissa hesitated for a moment before walking to one of the shelves. Robert observed her discreetly, the black hair tied in a simple bun, the delicate hands leafing through an art book. "Do you like Van Gogh?" he asked, noticing the book she had chosen. "I admire how he transformed pain into beauty," Melissa replied simply. That answer, so different from what Robert was used to hearing in the social circles he frequented, intrigued him. For a brief moment, he forgot who he was, who she was, and they talked about art as equals. Days passed and the accidental meetings became more frequent. In the library, in the garden, in the corridors. Brief moments where they exchanged glances, restrained words, discreet smiles. A particular universe built in silence, on the margins of the world that separated them. Catherine, always attentive, began to notice changes in her son's behavior. Robert seemed less focused on business, came home earlier, spent more time at the mansion than at the office. "The dinner with the Vanderbilts is confirmed for Friday," she announced during breakfast. "Caroline is eager to see you again." Robert merely nodded, showing no enthusiasm. His thoughts were in the next room, where Melissa was working on his mother's dresses. That same afternoon, he found Melissa in the back garden. She was sitting on a stone bench, drawing in her sketchbook. The late afternoon sun created a golden aura around her. "What are you drawing?" he asked, sitting beside her. Melissa quickly closed the notebook, embarrassed. Just some sketches, inspirations. For my own projects, when may I see? Hesitantly, she handed him the notebook. Robert flipped through the pages with genuine interest. Elegant modern dresses with a touch of originality that differentiated them from common trends. You have talent, he said, returning the notebook. Why do you work as a seamstress for other people? Not. All of us are born with the same opportunities, she replied without resentment. I need to pay the bills while building my own path. That honest simplicity touched Robert. For the first time, he felt small before someone who had so little materially but possessed an inner richness that he envied. Weeks passed. Melissa's work on Catherine's dresses was almost complete. The idea of not seeing her anymore in that house began to torment Robert. On a rainy afternoon, he found her alone in the improvised atelier. I'll finish the last dress tomorrow, she said, feeling the tension in the air. And then? He asked, coming closer. Then I go back to my life, she replied with a sad smile. And you continue with yours. Robert touched her hand on the table, a soft touch, almost imperceptible, but loaded with meaning. Melissa didn't pull away. Their eyes met, saying what words couldn't express. I don't want you to go, he confessed in a low voice. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made them quickly move apart. Catherine entered the room, casting a suspicious look at the two. Robert, I need you to accompany me to your father's office. We have important matters to discuss about the dinner with the Vanderbilts. Before leaving, Robert looked at Melissa one last time. There was a silent promise in that look, a promise that this would not be the last time they would see each other. That night, Melissa couldn't sleep. She knew she was entering dangerous territory. Robert belonged to a world that would never be hers. A world of rigid social conventions, where a seamstress of humble origins had no place. The next day, when delivering the last dress, Melissa was surprised by a note discreetly placed in her bag. Few words that changed everything. Central Park, Sunday, 10 a.m. Central Park displayed its most vibrant colors on that spring Sunday. Melissa arrived punctually, trying to control the nervousness that made her heart race. She wore a simple, floral dress different from the sophisticated models she sewed for Catherine Anderson. Robert was already waiting for her near the orchid greenhouse. When he saw her, his face lit up with a genuine smile, different from the one he displayed at social events and business meetings. You came, he said, as if until that moment he had doubted it. I shouldn't have, Melissa replied honestly. But I wanted to. They walked side by side along the tree-lined paths, talking about everything and nothing. There, away from the watchful eyes of the mansion, they were just a man and a woman discovering each other. Robert told her about the pressure of managing the family business, the expectations he had carried since childhood. Melissa talked about her childhood in the countryside, the move to New York in search of opportunities, the dreams of having her own atelier one day. Why did you never marry? She asked, curious. Robert hesitated before answering. My mother always had very specific plans for my future, and I never found someone who made me want to challenge her. Until now. The look they exchanged at that moment said more than any formal declaration. When their hands touched accidentally at first, then with intention, both felt the electric current that ran through their bodies. That meeting was the first of many. In the following months, they created a private world made up of discreet encounters in parks, cafes away from downtown, and occasionally when Catherine traveled in the mansion itself. Robert hired Melissa as a permanent consultant for the company's design department, creating a professional pretext for her presence. On a particularly significant afternoon, Robert took Melissa to see a small property in Soho, an old townhouse with large windows and a backyard. What do you think? He asked, watching her examine the space with bright eyes. It's beautiful, but why did you bring me here? I bought this place, revealed Robert. It could be your atelier, the beginning of your dream. Melissa stood still, divided between gratitude and fear of what it meant. I can't accept, she said finally. It would be like I was buying you, he completed, hurt. That's not what I intend, Melissa. I want to help you realize your dream because—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because I love you." It was the first time he expressed that feeling out loud. Melissa felt tears forming, fighting against the impulse to throw herself into his arms. "Robert, our worlds are too different. Your family would never accept it. Your mother—" "I don't care what my mother thinks," he interrupted, coming closer. "For the first time in my life, I want to make my own choices." The kiss they shared at that moment sealed a silent promise, a commitment that transcended social conventions and family expectations. At the Anderson mansion, however, Catherine was not oblivious to events. She noticed the changes in her son's behavior, the unexplained absences, the secret calls. When she discovered about the property in Soho, she didn't hesitate to confront him. "Are you throwing your life away for an adventure with a seamstress?" she asked with contempt. "Do you think I don't know about your clandestine meetings?" Robert remained firm. "It's not an adventure, Mother. I love Melissa and I intend to be with her." "And what will our friends say? Our partners, the Vanderbilts? Have you already forgotten that you practically made a commitment to Caroline?" "I never promised marriage to Caroline. You were the one who created that expectation." Catherine changed strategy, her tone suddenly becoming maternal. "Son, I don't deny that this girl may have qualities, but think about the future, the cultural differences, the difficulties you'll face. Is that the world you want for your children?" The mention of children made Robert hesitate. They had never discussed this subject, he and Melissa. Would they be able to build a family together, facing prejudice and social barriers? Sensing the doubt in her son's eyes, Catherine pressed, "Give yourself time to reflect. Accompany me to dinner with the Vanderbilts tomorrow, just as a gesture of courtesy. Afterward, if you're still decided, I'll respect your choice." Robert knew it was manipulation, but he agreed just to end that exhausting discussion. The following night he dressed formally for dinner, feeling as if he were betraying Melissa and himself. He tried to call her to explain the situation, but the call went straight to voicemail. What Robert didn't know was that at that exact moment, Melissa was facing her own nightmare. Caroline Vanderbilt was waiting for her at the exit of the small apartment where she lived. "We need to talk," said the socialite, with a cold smile on her perfect lips. Inside a luxury car parked on the street, Caroline got straight to the point. "I know about you and Robert, and I came to offer a deal." "There's no deal to be made," replied Melissa, maintaining her dignity. "What exists between me and Robert is our business." "Is it really?" Caroline opened a folder, revealing photos of the two together, documents of the Soho property purchase, detailed information about Melissa's personal life. "I have enough evidence to destroy your reputation and his. My father is one of the main investors in Anderson Industries. One word from him and the company faces a crisis that not even Robert can solve." Melissa felt her blood freeze. She didn't fear for herself, but for Robert. "What do you want from me?" she asked with a trembling voice. "For you to disappear. Simple as that. No goodbyes, no explanations. Make him believe it was just an adventure, that you used him out of self-interest." "He would never believe that." "Wouldn't he?" Caroline smiled again. "Men are surprisingly easy to manipulate when their pride is hurt, especially when they're surrounded by people who reinforce the idea that they were deceived." Melissa felt the weight of that threat. She knew the power of the Vanderbilt family, knew they were capable of fulfilling every word. "And if I refuse?" "Then prepare to see Robert lose everything. The respect in the market, the company his family built for generations, perhaps even his freedom, if I decide that certain documents present irregularities that the authorities should investigate." Melissa left the car feeling as if the world was collapsing on her shoulders. The next morning, she woke up with severe abdominal pains and dizziness. At the emergency room, she received the news that would forever transform her life. She was pregnant. That same night, Robert attended the dinner at the Vanderbilt mansion. He accepted sitting next to Caroline, hearing plans for a future he didn't want, toasting commercial partnerships that dangerously mixed with family alliances. All while his thoughts were with Melissa. Upon returning home, he found a simple envelope on his bed. Inside, a single sheet of paper with the delicate handwriting he knew so well. Robert, what we lived was intense and true, but not enough to face the world that separates us. I've chosen to follow my path alone. Don't look for me. I'll find my own destiny far from here, Melissa. The words, so cold and definitive, seemed written by someone else. He didn't recognize there the woman he had fallen in love with. He tried to call, but the number was deactivated. He went to her apartment, only to discover she had moved without leaving an address. Melissa had disappeared, taking with her not only his broken heart, but also a secret that would forever change the destiny of both. 5 years can drastically change a person's fate. For Melissa Scott, this time transformed pain into strength, longing into determination. Now, at 32, she managed her own atelier in Newport, Rhode Island. Melissa Scott Atelier had become a reference in sustainable fashion, using artisanal techniques and ecological materials that valued the work of local communities. The small, colorful house, close to the historic center, housed not only her business but also her home. On the upper floor, she lived with Michael, her 4-year-old son. The boy with brown hair and intensely green eyes, the same eyes as Robert, grew surrounded by his mother's love and the affection of the small community that had welcomed them. Every night, before bed, Michael asked for the same story. "Tell me again about the prince, Mommy." And Melissa, with a soft voice, narrated a fairy tale she had created about a prince who fell in love with a young artisan but had to leave for distant lands. One day, when the time is right, he will meet the son he has, and you will love each other very much, she always concluded, caressing the boy's hair. What Michael didn't know was that every word of that story carried fragments of the truth that Melissa kept in her heart. The letters she wrote to her son, to be read when he grew up, contained the true story. Without villains or heroes, just real people with their choices and consequences. In New York, Robert Anderson lived a completely different reality. He had become the president of Anderson Industries after his father's retirement due to health problems. Under his leadership, the company expanded internationally, adopting more sustainable and ethical practices. His face frequently appeared in business magazines, which described him as the ice businessman, brilliant but emotionally distant. His engagement to Caroline Vanderbilt had dragged on for years, with no definite date for the wedding. They lived more like partners than a couple, united by commercial interests and social appearances. The coldness that Robert had developed as a defense mechanism after Melissa's disappearance affected all his relationships. Catherine observed her son with growing concern. She had gotten what she wanted, Robert in command of the business, committed to a woman suitable to his social position, but had lost the essence of the son she knew. The spark in his eyes had disappeared, replaced by a mechanical efficiency that impressed in the corporate world, but worried in the personal realm. The lives of both would continue on parallel paths if it weren't for an unexpected event. Anderson Industries was launching a new sustainability initiative, seeking partners who could provide ecological materials and promote responsible practices in the production chain. A consultant specializing in sustainable fashion mentioned the innovative work developed by a designer in Newport. "Melissa Scott is revolutionizing the way we think about artisanal fashion in America," explained the consultant during a presentation. Her social project employs women from traditional communities and transforms ancestral techniques into contemporary pieces. Robert, who was reviewing documents during the meeting, abruptly looked up upon hearing that name. Coincidences happen, he thought. It must be someone else. But when the consultant displayed photos of the work, and finally of the designer herself, the world stopped. It was her. More mature, with a new haircut, but unmistakably Melissa. "I want to personally know this project," he announced, surprising his team with the sudden interest. "Schedule a visit for next week." Caroline, present. At the meeting, as a representative of Vanderbilt Investments, immediately noticed the change in her fiancé's behavior. She knew that name, remembered perfectly the agreement made years ago. The threat she believed was buried in the past resurged unexpectedly. In the tranquility of Newport, Melissa received the news that would change her life again. A representative from Anderson Industries had contacted her, interested in knowing her work for a possible national partnership. The company name made her heart race. She thought about refusing, but understood that this could be the opportunity her social project needed to expand and help more families. "There's no reason to fear," she told herself. "New York is too big. The chances of Robert being personally involved in this are minimal." On the morning of the visit, Melissa left Michael at school as usual and prepared the atelier to receive the visitors. The artisans who worked with her were excited about the possibility of a major partnership. Everything was organized to impress the representatives of the powerful textile industry. The sound of cars parking on the quiet street announced the arrival of the visitors. Melissa took a deep breath, adjusted the simple but elegant dress she had created especially for the occasion, and headed to the door. Time seemed to freeze when her eyes met Robert's. He stood at the entrance of the atelier, more imposing than she remembered. The slightly graying hair at the temples gave him an even more sophisticated air. For a moment, neither could speak. The past, with all its intensity, filled the space between them. "Melissa," he finally said with a controlled voice that hid the inner storm. "Robert," she replied, maintaining the professional composure she had developed over the years. "I didn't expect you to come personally. Some visits require special attention." The team accompanying him, unaware of the shared history, observed with curiosity the inexplicable tension between the two. Melissa recovered quickly. Assuming her role as hostess and businesswoman, she conducted the group through the atelier, explaining the creation process, the techniques used, the social impact of the project. Robert observed her every move, divided between admiration for what she had accomplished and the hurt over unanswered questions. He wanted to be furious, wanted to confront her about the disappearance, the cold letter, the years of silence, but something in her posture, in the way she interacted with the artisans, in the passion with which she spoke about her work, disarmed his anger. The visit proceeded with technical discussions about possible partnerships. Melissa presented her collection, explained her vision for the future of the project. At one point, while the team examined fabric samples, Robert approached her. "Why did you disappear like that?" he asked in a low voice, the question that had tormented him for years. "This is neither the time nor the place for that conversation," she replied, tense. "When would it be then? You didn't give me a choice, Melissa. You disappeared like smoke." Before she could answer, the atelier door suddenly opened. Her teacher from the school entered hurriedly, holding the hand of a green-eyed boy who was whimpering. "Sorry to interrupt, Melissa, but Michael fell on the playground and was very upset. He insisted on coming to his mother." Time stopped again. Robert looked at the boy, immediately noticing the eyes, his eyes reflected in a childish face that bore unmistakable traces of Melissa. Understanding hit him like a physical blow. Melissa moved instinctively toward her son, kneeling to examine the small scratch on his knee. "It's all right, my love. Mommy will take care of this." Robert remained motionless, unable to fully process what he was seeing. The boy must have been 4, maybe 5 years old. The age coincided perfectly with the period when Melissa had disappeared. That afternoon, after the team left, Robert returned alone to the atelier. He found Melissa closing the establishment, the boy no longer present. "He's my son, isn't he?" he asked directly, without beating around the bush. Melissa didn't answer immediately. Instead, she invited him in and sit down. From her apron pocket, she took out a yellowed envelope. "This is one of the letters I wrote for Michael over the years, about his father, about me, about us. It might answer your questions better than I could do now." With trembling hands, Robert opened the envelope and began to read. The letter, dated 5 years earlier, narrated the events of that last night. Caroline's visit, the threats, the discovery of the pregnancy, the painful decision to leave to protect him and the child she was expecting. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice choked with contained emotion. "I would have faced everything, Melissa. For you, for our son." "And destroyed your life in the process," she replied softly. "I was scared, alone, pregnant. I did what I believed was best. For all of us, the silence that followed carried the weight of 5 years of absence, of unasked questions, of lost moments. "I want to meet him," Robert finally said. "My son. I want to be part of his life." Melissa nodded slowly. "He has always known he has a father. I told him stories about you in my own way. I think it's time for him to know the truth." Night was falling over Newport when Melissa led Robert to the small square where Michael played under a neighbor's supervision. The boy ran happily, unaware of the importance of that moment that would forever change the course of 3 lives. The first meeting between father and son was like a mutual discovery. Robert, accustomed to controlling all situations, found himself completely vulnerable before those green eyes that reflected his own. "Michael, this is a very special friend of Mommy's," Melissa introduced with delicacy. "His name is Robert." The boy, with the natural curiosity of childhood, extended his hand in a surprisingly formal gesture. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Robert." Something inside Robert crumbled at that moment. All the defenses, all the coldness cultivated over the years. He knelt to be at his son's height, and with a choked voice replied, "The pleasure is all mine, Michael." They spent the rest of the afternoon in the square. Michael showed his favorite toys, told stories about his school, asked questions about the big city where Robert lived. The naturalness with which they communicated seemed to defy the years of separation, as if something in the blood recognized the bond that united them. When the sun began to set, they walked back to Melissa's house. On the porch, while Michael was distracted with a game, Robert confronted the reality now presented. "I can't simply go back to New York and pretend none of this happened," he said with determination. "I want to be part of his life, of both your lives." Melissa hesitated. "Robert, it's not that simple. We have established lives. You have commitments, an engagement." "An engagement based on lies," he interrupted. "Caroline knew about you." "About us? It was she who threatened you, who separated us. How can I continue with someone capable of that? And your family? Your company? Are you willing to risk everything?" Robert looked at Michael, who played unaware of the conversation that would define his future. "For the first time, I understand what really matters. And it's not the company. It's not the family name. It's not my mother's approval." That night, Robert stayed at the only inn on the small street. He couldn't sleep, mentally reviewing the day's events, planning the steps he would need to take to rebuild a life that included his son. At dawn, he made decisions that would change the course of his existence. The first call was to his personal lawyer, requesting investigations into the threats made by Caroline years ago and the preparation of documents that would guarantee Michael's rights as his son. The second, more difficult, was to Catherine. "Mother, I need to talk to you in person. I'll be in New York tomorrow." Back in New York, Robert faced Caroline first. In the luxurious apartment they partially shared, he placed on the table the letters Melissa had written over the years, narrating the truth about her disappearance. "Did you know she was pregnant when you threatened her?" he asked, controlling the fury he felt. Caroline paled but maintained her composure. "I didn't do anything that any woman wouldn't do to protect her relationship. She was a nobody, Robert, a seamstress with ambitions above her station. A woman who had the courage to raise our son alone, while I lived a lie by your side." Robert took from his pocket the velvet box containing the engagement ring. "It's over, Caroline. There's nothing more between us." The reaction was exactly what he expected. Threats, blackmail, promises of destruction. "My father will withdraw all investments from your company. I'll destroy your reputation. I'll fight for custody of that boy claiming the mother is mentally unstable. No, you won't," interrupted Robert firmly. "Every threat of yours is being recorded. My lawyers are already prepared to file protective measures. Touch Melissa or Michael, and it will be you who faces the legal consequences." At the Anderson mansion, the confrontation with Catherine was even more intense. The matriarch, upon learning of the existence of a grandson, oscillated between disbelief and fury. "It's absurd. He's probably not even your son. "I demand a DNA test before any acknowledgement," she declared, walking nervously around the living room. "The test has already been done, Mother," replied Robert, handing her an envelope. "Michael is my son without any doubt, and I intend to bring him and Melissa into my life." Catherine opened the envelope with trembling hands. Upon reading the test result, her face transformed into a mask of cold calculation. "We can resolve this discreetly. Offer a substantial amount for her to keep the boy away. We can establish a fund for his education without the need for direct involvement. This is not a negotiation, Mother. I'm communicating a decision already made." "And what about Anderson Industries, our social position? Do you think your partners will easily accept an heir born out of wedlock, the fruit of a relationship with an employee?" Robert stood up, facing his mother with a determination she had never seen before. "For the first time in my life, I'm saying no to your manipulations. If I have to choose between the company and my son, I choose Michael without hesitation." The following weeks were whirlwinds of changes. As predicted, the breaking of the engagement and the revelation about Michael generated a scandal in New York social circles. The Vanderbilt family withdrew their investments from Anderson Industries, causing temporary instability in the company's shares. Robert, however, proved to be an even more skilled strategist when motivated by the heart. He restructured the company, sought new investors, and transformed the crisis into an opportunity by launching a line of sustainable products in partnership with Melissa's atelier. The Michael collection, inspired by the colors and energy of childhood, became a sales phenomenon, associating the brand with family values and social responsibility. In Newport, Melissa faced her own challenges. The news that her son was heir to one of the country's largest fortunes provoked diverse reactions in the small community. Some people distanced themselves, others approached out of interest. Michael, sensitive to the changes, frequently asked about the special friend who now called every day. "When will we see Robert again, Mummy?" he asked one morning during breakfast. Melissa hesitated. It was time to tell the truth, appropriate. Here to the understanding of a 4-year-old child. "Robert is not just a friend, Michael. He is your father." The boy's eyes widened. "Like the prince in the story." "Yes, like the prince in the story," she confirmed, emotional. "And why was he away for so long?" "Because sometimes adults make mistakes, even when they love each other very much. But now he's back and he wants to be part of our life." Robert kept his promise. Dividing his time between New York and Newport, he gradually built his relationship with his son. Each shared moment, from teaching Michael to fly a kite on the beach to reading stories before bed, was a precious discovery, an attempt to compensate for the lost years. With Melissa, the path was more complex. Broken trust was not easily rebuilt. Long conversations at night after Michael fell asleep allowed both to understand each other's choices and pains. Love had never disappeared. It had just been dormant under layers of hurt and distance. On a special afternoon, Robert took them to see a piece of land he had bought on the slope of a hill overlooking the sea. "We can build a house here," he explained, "a place that's ours where Michael can grow up free, where you can expand your atelier." "And you? Would you abandon New York, the company?" questioned Melissa. "I can manage the company remotely, travel when necessary. The important thing is for us to be together, building something real." Michael was running around the property playing explorer when he found a small shiny stone. "Look, Mommy, a treasure." Robert knelt beside his son, examining the common stone that in the child's eyes seemed precious. "You know, Michael, sometimes the greatest treasures are right in front of us, but we take time to see them." He looked at Melissa as he said these words, and the silent understanding between them was deeper than any formal declaration. The final confrontation with Catherine happened unexpectedly. The matriarch, seeing that she could not separate her son from his new family, decided to meet her grandson personally. She appeared without warning in Newport, finding Robert, Melissa, and Michael at breakfast. The meeting, initially tense, transformed when Michael, with the naturalness of children, approached his grandmother and asked, "Do you like stories about princes too?" Something in the boy's gaze, perhaps the same vitality that Catherine had seen in her son as a child, melted decades of coldness. For the first time, the matriarch allowed herself to see beyond the social conventions that had always dictated her life. She confessed to Robert later, "I also had a forbidden love in my youth. I didn't have the courage to fight for it, and I became this bitter person, you know. Don't make my mistakes." The reconciliation between mother and son opened unexpected paths. Catherine, surprisingly, became an advocate for the union between Robert and Melissa, facing the prejudice of high society with the same determination she had previously used to separate them. At Anderson Industries, a silent transformation occurred. Robert implemented policies to value employees, sustainable practices, and social projects inspired by Melissa's work. The company, previously known only for its economic power, came to be recognized for its positive impact. Melissa's atelier expanded, becoming a training center for women in vulnerable situations. Her clothing line, which blended artisanal tradition and contemporary design, gained international recognition. Together, she and Robert created the Michael Foundation, designed to support children from underprivileged communities. On a golden autumn afternoon 5 years after the reunion, Melissa, Robert, and Michael walked on the beach in Newport. The boy, now 9, ran ahead chasing seagulls. Robert held Melissa's hand, where a simple ring symbolized the union they had finally made official months before, in an intimate ceremony in the garden of the house they built together. "Look, Dad, Mom, I drew us," shouted Michael, showing a drawing made in the wet sand, 3 figures holding hands under a large smiling sun. Robert embraced Melissa, observing their son and the drawing that would soon be carried away by the waves. "Do you know what I think when I see you two?" "What?" she asked, resting her head on his shoulder. "That my world now exists," he replied, repeating the words that Michael had written in his first drawing of the reunited family. Melissa smiled, understanding the depth of that simple phrase. The path had not been easy. The consequences of the breakups, the adjustments, the challenges of uniting such different worlds, all this was still part of their lives. But they were together, facing each obstacle with the certainty that true love, when it survives time, fear, and distance, doesn't come back the same. It comes back stronger. Michael ran back to his parents, throwing himself into their arms. "Let's go home. I want to show my new project to Grandma Catherine." They walked together along the beach, leaving footprints in the sand that would soon be erased by the sea. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, as if nature was celebrating that family that, against all expectations, had found its own path to happiness. Dear listeners, we hope that the journey of Melissa, Robert, and little Michael has touched your hearts. To continue experiencing moving stories like this one, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives. Find it here, clicking on the left. If this story of love, overcoming, and new beginnings touched your soul, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring new stories that explore the complexities of relationships and the second chances that life offers us. Share in the comments your own stories of new beginnings, and